Howdy folks. Today I'm going to talk about the operation of your air gauge. And when you get an air gauge, you should get these components here. The gauge itself, sub dies, primary die, master pellets in either 22 or 17, shell holder for 17 and 22. Now the first thing you want to do before you start setup is make sure you have an air compressor. Set the regulator on the air compressor, if it has one, for around 70 to 80 psi. If you have a filter to go on the line at the air compressor, that's best but not required. Now we'll set up the air gauge on a reloading press. First thing we're going to do is pick out our 17 caliber shell holder, snap it into the press, take the primary die, insert the 17 caliber sub die, start it into the press, lower the arm, drop the die in until it just touches the shell holder. Then back it off 1 3/4 turns, approximately. Take your air gauge, slide it on, tighten it up. Now you're going to need a quick connect fitting. The air gauge doesn't come with one. That'll have to be mounted here. You could also mount a filter at this point too, but the air gauge has a built-in filter, so it's not necessary. Hook up the air supply. And we want this first regulator, I call it the secondary regulator. We want that one at 60 psi to start. The primary regulator, we're going to set that for 30 psi. So we have secondary reg with filter, primary reg, needle valve, relief valve. This will protect the air gauge if it becomes overpressurized. It'll release at 15 psi. We have our die, sub die, shell holder. Now over here we have our master pellets. They're color coded. In the 17 caliber size, red is 451, green is 452, blue is 453. In 22 caliber, the red is 551, green is 552, blue is 553. So we're going to calibrate the gauge. I usually start off with the biggest pellet, which in this case is going to be 453. Place it in the shell holder. Make sure the shell holder is fully engaged into the ram. Raise it up. Right now our gauge is reading about 12 psi. Now if you want to change that, we'll turn the needle valve up or down to adjust the position. Normally I'll put it at around 12 psi if I want to know the size of a pellet. So now we know that 12 psi is equal to 453. We'll put the 452 in. 452 is at 6 psi. 451 is right about 3 psi. Now your settings may not be exactly the same as mine because there's variation in the sub dies. These can be a few 10,000ths off from lot to lot, and my masters I try to hold a tight tolerance, but they can still be 2 10,000ths of an inch off. So in this case we have 3, 6, and 12. Now if I grab some pellets, start sizing up a few different lots of pellets. I have some JSB exacts and some Cometa exacts. Now let's try a few Cometas in there first in 17 cal. Just place them right inside the little divot in the shell holder. Now we're going to have to lower the ram a little bit because the pellet's not actually going far enough into the die. There we go. Like I said, the initial adjustment of the die is mostly for the masters. Pellets have such a variation in height. You just have to make sure that the head of the pellet is about 70 thousandths inside the sub-die. So now we have a Cometa pellet in there. It's registering about 1 psi. So we know that that's actually about 450 head size. It's actually smaller than our masters. Let's put another one in. And again, it's right about 1 psi. We'll put a different lot of pellets in there. Here's the JSB. Now we got 3.5 psi, so we know that one's over 451. And the next batch is right around 3. Okay, so now we know the actual size of the heads. If we want to sort pellets, I recommend that we adjust the gauge such that the needle is towards the higher end of the readings. So we were getting around 3 psi with the JSB exacts. I'm going to put another pellet in there. Now I'm going to adjust the needle up higher. We'll get better magnification and better resolution for the actual size of the heads. I'm going to put it at about 10 psi. And when I sort pellets, I'll take a piece of paper, just mark it out into a grid pattern. And when I sort pellets, as I'll show you in a second, I'll just set them in the particular pressure range that they're at. At this point, I'm not terribly concerned about the size of the head. We determined they're right around 451. Right now I want to sort them and try to get all the same size and for shooting purposes. So here we have, that's the 10 psi pellet. We'll put that one there. Grab another pellet out of the tin. That one's 14 psi. And eventually you'll get a distribution of different sizes, and what you're going to want to do is determine whether you want to shoot the average size, throw out the big and small, or your gun may like a particular size, in which case you're going to have to utilize the original settings of 12, 6, and 3 that we use with the masters and sort your pellets based on the actual size relative to the masters. Now, every once in a while, I would recommend that you check the unit for leaks. And to do that, turn the primary regulator down to 10 psi, put your finger over the sub-die, and either squirt soapy water around the fittings or listen. Now you might hear air coming out of the bottom of the primary regulator. There's a little vent hole there. That's normal. That's how this regulator works. It's always bleeding air. So again, set your air compressor at about 70 to 80 psi, secondary reg 60, primary reg 30. Adjust wear on the gauge by turning the needle valve. Remember, if you're sorting a lot of pellets, it's best to have them towards the upper end of the gauge for better resolution. Now, if you're sorting a bunch of pellets and you're not getting much magnification, you're only getting a 6 to 7 psi change, you can increase the primary reg pressure. And whenever you increase the primary reg pressure, it's going to give you a bigger change in the gauge for a given difference in size of your head of your pellets. I hope this helps.